We got one more guest here for this Tuesday edition of Bang the Book Radio. That is professional handicapper Rolf Michaels from WagerTalk.com. Rolf, how's it going today, man?
Going great, Adam. Thanks for having me on. Always appreciate it.
Always great to have you on the show here. And in fact, you want to continue something that Brian and I were talking about in that previous segment regarding the NHL. So we got a little bit of a crossover here. What's the hockey angle that you're looking at?
Well, let me preface it by I don't follow hockey, but I love listening to you guys. I always tune in to get my golf picks, and you guys are talking NHL prior, and it's a unique situation with the All-Star break and the buys. So I quite simply did a query at killersports.com, again, a free database for anyone that wants to use it, and teams that have over 3 days rest against a team that has 1 day rest. Since 2016, the team that has the rest has been an average favorite of minus 110, and they are 31-45, 40.8%. So you have a 40.8% play on a favorite. So you're getting a dog at even money hitting almost 60%. Also, in that same scenario, when you have a team that has over 3 days rest against a team with exactly 1 day rest, the over-unders have gone 46, 24, and 6, 65.7%. That is fading the Lightning tonight, and tomorrow fade the Blackhawks, Islanders, Senators, Wild, and on February 2nd, the Oilers, Canadiens, Ducks, and Blues. Again, no promise the success will continue, but obviously that's under the last 3 years with 80 games of data to give us those records.
Well, and that, that's the quantifiable element to what I was talking about, where, when you play these daily winter sports, whether it's college basketball, the NBA, the NHL, you are accustomed to playing. You get into that rhythm and you want to stay with that rhythm. And when that rhythm is upset for one reason or another, it's tough to get back into the swing of things. So I'm glad you had those numbers for us.
Yeah, and again, it's a couple keys here. Number one, make sure you have a long enough period of work. And these numbers are since 2016, the start of the season. When I went back to 2015, they were almost identical. They were about 1 percentage point less on both numbers. So I used the 2016 numbers. So we're going back multiple years. We have 4 years of work. We have 80 games. So we know, as you said, when you have a historic trend like that, you don't want to bet a trend blindly. But when you have 60% numbers for that period of time and 66% numbers on the totals, the average total in those 86 games was 5.6. The average score in those games was 3.4 to 3 for the opponent, so 6.4 goals scored. So you're almost 0.8 goals over that total, which is 66% as is.
Well, if I remember correctly, I believe the sample size that you're looking at there is when the NHL started to incorporate the bye weeks and give teams a full 5 days rest. So that would make sense as to why you're looking at that sample size, at least from, dating back to 2016. But, hey, always important to look up things that, have some validity to them. It's not just a trend for trend's sake. It's a trend that, you sort of, and this is something that I've done a lot with that Killer Sports database. And I did this, like in my opening line report for college football or for the NFL. You get an idea in your head and say, okay, I think this should work. I think that this should be a profitable angle. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But being able to quantify it and actually see the results is a tremendous help. That website is a great resource.
Yeah, and let me just throw out one more thing. We'll just do one more crossover sport here, and it's the NBA. And, on a show I did yesterday, we were talking about the NBA, and you have to remember this year is different in the NBA. They moved those schedules up to start in mid-October. They didn't want players like LeBron taking off those national TV games. And let's face it, people on the East Coast, if you're going to buy one ticket, you're going to buy a LeBron ticket or a Golden State ticket. You don't want Curry or LeBron sitting out. So the NBA changed it where they have fewer back-to-back road games this year. And in the previous 4 years, before this season, when they had their normal NBA schedule, road teams were 50.2%. I mean, back-to-back games were 50.2%. It was a toss-up. The line was built in. The players were used to playing. Back-to-back meant nothing in the NBA. Well, this year, back-to-back games are 46%, almost 5% less than that average. And when you have away back-to-back games, it was 47% the previous 4 years. And this year it's down to 42 point something. So it's a full 5% less. So again, we've changed the schedule like the NHL did a few years ago. The NBA changed their schedule where every team played multiple back-to-back games, and now those are happening much less frequently where the players aren't as accustomed to it. So we'll see if that pattern continues.
That makes a lot of sense. And you know, again, I mean, these are things that you want to make adjustments to, because it's not always a guarantee that the odds makers or the betting market will make adjustments to these types of things. So good stuff there from Rolf Michaels. And again, that killersports.com database, a very, very good resource for you. So, Rolf, let's talk about the Super Bowl. New England, 2.5-point favorite, total 56. I know we touched on this last week. Anything changed for you as you've been going through the handicapping process for this game?
Well, you know, I've done a lot of radio shows. We did a lot of Wager Talk videos yesterday. We've talked to numerous bookmakers. And the funny thing is, you would think the Super Bowl, everyone would be set on where they think it's going to go. A handful of bookmakers think it still can get to 3. And the others are saying, no, we see it coming down in a lot of spots now where it's -2.5, -105. You know, I think it'll come back down, and basically I think this, as far as reasoning goes with where the line is. The line opened up, the Rams are pick, and I mean, within a millisecond, the Patriots were the favorite. And as you saw that Patriots line creep up, you know, I've seen reports that people said, wow, 95% of all the big bets are on the Patriots. Well, they should be. The people making big bets usually are sharper bettors, and they see the line climbing on the Patriots, and they're going to bet the team where the line continues to move. If you were betting the Rams at any point up until now, you would have been foolish, because you know the Patriots' money was going to keep coming in. Well, now we've seen a peak, or, you know, in my mind, we've seen a peak. So now we're going to start seeing that Rams money come in because it's reached where it is. It stayed there for multiple days. We've seen it go back and forth on the juice line. And I think the Rams money comes in now because they know it's not going to get to 3, and they want to start jumping in before it gets down to the 2 or 1.5. So, you know, I look at it as this. I had the Rams power rated as 1.5 better. I had the, you know, up at the Superbook up until last week, before these championship games were played, they actually had posted a line. It was the Rams pick against KC. It was the Rams pick against New England. It was New Orleans -1.5 against both teams. So they had New Orleans as the highest team. So what happened? Well, I think people think, oh, the Rams didn't deserve to win. And we saw Brady become Brady again, and we see Belichick, and we know they've had their Super Bowl success. So all of a sudden people jump on that Brady bandwagon. But I had the Rams power rated higher. I'm now getting a 4-point value on the Rams. And I look at New England, and prior to last week, I said I am on the Chiefs. Why am I on the Chiefs? Because New England had one of the strongest home road dichotomies, 8-0 at home. They were 3-5 straight up in ATS on the road. They were -43 yards per game on the road. So what changed? Well, they played the worst defense in football, the number one, or actually the second worst, I believe, in the regular season. They finished number 31. So they went and they played the number 31 defense against a quarterback who had played 16 games, which we know Belichick knows how to master young quarterbacks, and they won one game. So while it's not strong enough to be a play for me, I clearly have an opinion on the Rams.
And this is what's so interesting about this Super Bowl is that, you know, people like to bet what they're comfortable with. And especially a lot of public bettors want to bet the side that they think that they can trust. And it looks like New England in this game because you've got that experience edge, because you've got Brady and Belichick, you know, going up against McVay and really Jared Goff, as we've talked about already, and as we will keep talking about. He's the biggest X factor in this game. If he plays well, the Rams could very well win. If he doesn't, then the Rams better run for 180 yards. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for them. But this is one of those almost old school versus new school handicaps in the sense that the quant crowd, the numbers crowd, the people like you that have, adjusted metrics and, all the different spreadsheets that you have, they're going to like the Rams because the Rams on paper were a better team over the full body of work. The Patriots recently have been the better team, and that influences some thought processes in the market as well. So, I mean, you should wind up with a pretty interesting split by the time this game kicks off.
Yeah, and again, you probably, on this show, you're probably going to have 10 people say the same thing. It's one game. If New England were playing the Rams in a neutral setting in London on Week 12, and New England was a 2-point favorite, and the total was 56.5, I would pass on both sides in total. So why? Because it's the Super Bowl, am I all of a sudden going to have a play on it? I'm not. If I wouldn't have had a play on it Week 15 or Week 12 or Week 9, and I didn't find value enough to make it a play, just because it's the one game, I know people love it, and, there's other ways and better ways to make money, be it live betting, be it the props, be it, a lot of other ways to get value besides having to have that side and total bet prior to the game starting.
All right, so let's talk about the market then. I know that you released some good information over at Wager Talk here this week, or maybe it was late last week, with historical prop results, some of the very popular things that people are going to bet, and how they've done over the last several years. What is Rolf Michaels looking at from a prop standpoint here for the big game?
Well, a lot of people don't like playing favorites. They like putting up lesser monies and winning more. But, I mean, can I guarantee it? No. Can I tell you that there's many sharp groups that do this automatically every year and make money every year? Absolutely. And that is taking every player on the board that will they score a touchdown, and you say no. The books want to put out props on players to score touchdowns. Let me give you an example for the Patriots. Sonny Michel to score a touchdown, no, -220. Burkhead -180. White -150. Edelman -140. Hogan -180. Dorsett -240. Gronkowski -200. And I think I missed a couple. So there are eight guys right there. So, and all of them are 200 or less. So if you bet no to every person, that means 4 different players of that group have to score a touchdown for you to break even. 5 different players have to score touchdowns for you to lose money. It is just one of those situations where they can't put the line too high because they'll get burned by the sharps. But they love those people, and people love to say, oh, my God, Edelman's got to score a touchdown, or, White was going to catch a touchdown, or Michel's going to score a touchdown, that the no has so much value in it, and Vegas doesn't care because every Joe public bettor that comes in this weekend is going to find their favorite player or a couple players and say, well, I get plus this and plus this. So if I bet 2 of these guys and they split, I get 1 touchdown, I'm going to make money. Well, that's a fine way of looking at it. But if you bet all of them to say no, it has to be a 65-64 Super Bowl on both sides, and 11 different players have to score touchdowns for you not to make money in that scenario. So that's not giving you a specific prop to play. That's just talking about how you can find value on these props.
I think that we should drive this point home. Everybody wants to have fun with the Super Bowl, and I'm completely on board with having fun. I'll throw some bullshit props in there, the novelty props, or, I'll throw some longer shots in there. But there's a difference in the Super Bowl between gambling and betting. If you're gambling, you're playing a lot of those plus money prices. If you're betting, and I've mentioned this before on the show, I've had, handicappers, mentors of mine say, when it comes to props, you want more minuses than pluses. To me, that's betting. Playing a bunch of plus money stuff is gambling. That's not to say it can't hit. That's not to say it's not fun. First score, safety, overtime, all that type of stuff. I know what's happened here recently. The odds of it happening again are very, very small. So if you're playing those plus money things, you're gambling. If you're playing those minus things, you're betting. And it's all a matter of what you want to achieve with the Super Bowl.
Oh, absolutely. Again, that's, there's not many people that are going to come out and say, hey, I'm going to bet 500 on all those props and be minus 200. So you're betting 1,000, you're putting up 8,000 to win. But again, if you're in the position to be a sophisticated bettor, then, that's some value. I'm going to go over a handful of props here that I also play that aren't those situations. And before I get to some of those specifics, I also want to bring out a couple points, and that is, I think when you go into your props, you clearly have to have an idea of who you like, side or total. In my head, I'm basically playing out a box score, projecting yards for each team, where I think the game's going to go. And the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to base every prop on my thought of the game. If I'm rooting for the Rams and I'm rooting for the under, I don't want every prop to be the under in the New England yards and the situation where I can get whitewashed. So you want to spread it out where even if your thought process of the game is wrong, you still have some props that aren't really affected with the way the game is going to be played. So, let me just go through a couple examples I have. And the first three I played, and I might have mentioned this on the show last week, and I'll just go ahead and mention them again. First score of the game, Rams field goal, plus 450. So you're getting almost 5-1 for basically one of the four things that can happen. New England touchdown, New England field goal, Rams touchdown, Rams field goal. So I feel you're getting value in that. In two of the last three Super Bowls, the underdog has kicked the field goal to score first. Those odds were actually 7-2. It's gone up in this game. You also have a situation where New England, in the two Super Bowls they've been in and in the past 5 years, the New England twice, Belichick has won that coin toss and deferred. Most people deferred. And in fact, if you look up the Wager Talk bowl prop results for the last 9 years, you'll see that each of the last 8 Super Bowl coin toss winners have deferred. The only one that won the coin toss and received was New Orleans when they beat Indy 31-17 back in Super Bowl 44. So, if Belichick wins the coin toss, I'm going to say he defers. If McVay wins it, he might defer too, but you're not 100% sure. This is his first Super Bowl. He's had this 2-week period to think about. First turnover of the game, a fumble. I'm plus 160. Well, you have a 50-50 shot. Is it going to be an interception? Is it going to be a fumble? We've seen New England change their offense the last few weeks. We've seen New England become a ground and pound. Belichick hasn't even been hit in the pocket the last couple games, so I don't think he'll make that turnover. Goff, I expect them to run the ball. They say Gurley's healthy. We know what C.J. Anderson does. So I think you're going to have many more rush attempts early than you are. So I'm going to take a chance at plus 160 where I think there's some value betting that the first turnover will be a fumble. And then the highest scoring half, the second half plus overtime versus the first half. And this is minus 125. And people, usually you see the higher scoring second halves when the game's close. Well, if you look at the year-to-date stats on these two teams, you'll see that both teams have about a 55 or 60% split in their scoring in the first half. So they were actually much higher scoring in the first half than the second half. We know the reason why, though. Both of these teams got out to early leads. When New England plays their division foes, they get out to a 28 or 28-7 lead and then reel it in the second half. The Rams, we know, got out to huge leads early in the year and then didn't score as much in the second half. I think it's opposite. I think you have a conservative game plan. New England tries to run the ball, so the second half I have is the higher scoring game. So those are the three I had that aren't player specifics. And then I also have a handful of player-specific props I'd like to go over.
Absolutely. Go for it. You got the train rolling here, so keep going.
I have one. I always pick a defensive guy. I like watching the defense. I like watching guys make tackles. So, I went with Kyle Van Noy over 6.5 tackles. That's assisted and total tackles. He's a guy, it's plus 110, and he's had 14 in the 2 playoff games, so he's averaged over 6.5. He averaged 7 per game on the road this year, so he's averaged that number. In the last 8 weeks, he's played 88% of the snaps. So he's not going to go out on that third down play. He's good enough to go in and play that outside linebacker or go up and play DE, and he's in there, and he sometimes covers that back coming out of the backfield. So, number one, make sure you're playing a player that's going to be on the field. He certainly does that. So I bet Kyle Van Noy over 6.5 tackles. Player to score a first TD. And this is, I took Sonny Michel plus 110 over Gurley minus 130. In the playoffs, Sonny Michel has run the ball 53 times for 242 yards. He's got 5 TDs. Gurley, is he healthy? I don't know. I'm not going to assume he's healthy, but I'm getting the player that the Patriots have counted on in the playoffs. I'm getting the player that if it's third and short, he's getting the ball. I'm getting the player that when he gets down to the goal line, he's getting the ball. I don't know what the Rams are going to do, but I'm getting Sonny Michel plus $110 on a team that's actually the favorite to score the first TD in that matchup against Gurley. 2 more I have. Total sacks by the Rams under 1.5. Several times already I've talked about how since they lost Josh Gordon and they lost that deep threat, the Patriots have become a different offense. They are now a ground and pound offense. They have one of the best offensive linemen. They're one of the best offensive lines in football. And yes, the Rams D-line is incredible. 4 number 1 draft choices, I believe they still have starting on that line. But this is Tom Brady. Tom Brady knows how to get rid of the ball. Tom Brady knows how to audible out of the blitz. And you're not going to have crowd noise. It's not going to be an issue for him. Tom Brady has experienced running backs that know how to pick up the blitz. Tom Brady has Edelman to dump it off, that they know the hot routes to each other. So I just think that Brady is not going to get sacked twice, and that is a total sacks by the Rams under 1.5. New England, like I said, no sacks in the 2 playoff games. And down the stretch, Brady has been sacked once or less 5 of the last 6 games. So in their last 8 games, Brady has only been sacked twice, 1 time in those 8 games. And then one that total rush attempts by Rex Burkhardt over 4.5. This is minus 120. What an interesting Super Bowl where on both sides you have running backs that have become meaningful running backs that weren't with these teams midseason. C.J. Anderson for the Rams. Rex Burkhardt was on the IR games 5 through 12. He missed that entire middle of the season. Since he's been back in the playoffs, 16 attempts. Regular season, last 5 games, 37 rush attempts. That's over 7 per game. So, again, I think they're going to spread it out. I think they're going to go with fresh legs, and they're going to give Burkhardt, again, at least 4.5 carries. So, those are props that, not only I like, that I bet, that I gave to my customers. And, I'm putting about, when we talk about a best bet, when I have a regular season best bet that's worth 4 units, I went and I put 1 unit on this game. So, I have 8 units invested. So that's like 2 regular season games total. But again, it's so spread out that I can't imagine ever going 0-8 in that scenario where I would lose 8 units in that matchup. And again, with a couple pluses in there and some nice value, you win the Rams scoring a field goal first at plus 450. That almost covers every other bet you have.
Well, a good list there to be sure from Ralph Michaels. A lot of thought going into that. And, keep in mind, a lot of options out there for you. It's very time consuming to break all this stuff down. But like he said, you're sort of thinking about this from a game flow standpoint, playing out the box score in your mind, and then making educated guesses and decisions as a result. Let's transition over to the college hoops side of things here, Rolf, for a few minutes, and let's talk about the Colonial Athletic Association, the CAA. Hofstra leads this conference by 3 games. It's the biggest lead in either a division or a conference in college basketball. Are they just that much better than the rest of the pack here?
Boy, what a shock. I mean, Hofstra was a team that won 19 games last year, did have 4 starters back, so they had a good team. But, looking back at like Blue Ribbon had them 4th in the conference. Charleston was the team that was supposed to be the best team. Hofstra has the longest or second longest win streak in the country, 16 straight games. And you look at offensive efficiency, and it is just night and day. Hofstra, if you haven't seen Justin Wright Foreman play, he's their shooting guard. He's number 3 or 4 in scoring in the country. A legitimate scorer. This kid can just play ball. He is a kid that's put up 40 once. He's put up 30 more 6 times. Hofstra's offensive efficiency is number 18 in the country this year. Northeastern's about 50. Everyone else in the conference, 120 or higher. So when you're looking at the offensive side of the ball, again, it is night and day. When you look on the defensive side of the ball, as far as efficiency goes, Charleston is the best defensive team, and Hofstra's number 2. So to me, Hofstra is just legit. Justin Wright Foreman is a kid from Queens, New York, one of those New York kids that isn't afraid to go up against anybody. Their schedule, the first half of the schedule, the Colonial played everybody. So it was a complete round robin the first half, and then it's a complete round robin the second half. They went 9-0. They swept each of their opponents. So, going through the second half, I don't see them getting through the conference and winning the conference outright, because you have a couple situations where, you were a team that wasn't picked to win it all, and you blew through the conference. Everyone knows you're 3 games clear. So now it's almost like you have that bullseye on your back. You're now going through the second half of the conference. You're now playing 9 straight games where teams have revenge. They went to William & Mary. They won by 3 overtimes. They still have to go to Charleston. They still have to go to Northeastern. That Northeastern game's this Saturday. Both of those are, I think, potential losses. But the way they're playing, the way they have the best offense, the second best defense, number 10 in the country in effective field goal percentage. They do not turn the ball over. They are like in the top 20 in offensive turnovers. They have a senior point guard in Bowie, and Wright Foreman sometimes does play point guard when he spells him, but for the most part, he's playing either the shooting guard or the small forward. So, clearly I think Hofstra runs the table. I think they lose 1 or 2. I think they'll be a significant favorite in the Colonial Athletic Conference. And then your next group of teams, Northeastern, Delaware, and Charleston, both in that 5 and 6 win range. Those are the only 4 teams with winning records in the conference. Hofstra, of course, undefeated. Northeastern 6-3, Delaware 6-3, Charleston 5-4. But you mentioned, those 4 teams right there have played the 4 weakest schedules in the conference. Now, obviously, when the best 4 teams usually play the weakest schedule in a round robin because you haven't played the opponents. But the way they played the home and road games, while no one's going to catch them, I think clearly the next best team is Charleston. They were a team that was there last year, won 26 games, returned 3 starters, has 2 of the best players in the conference in Grant Ryler and Gerald Brantley. So I think Charleston rises to second in the conference, and then you have Northeastern and Delaware. On the bottom, it really is hit and miss. You have some bad defensive teams in the Colonial this year, and you're not used to hearing that. I mean, I remember, 5, 7, 8 years ago when the Colonial had Old Dominion and NC Wilmington, it was like that Missouri Valley Conference where everybody played defense. Well, now you have some horrendous defensive teams as those teams moved on to different conferences. Elon is one of the worst defenses in the country. 353 teams. 5 teams are rated 300 or higher on defense in that conference. So it gives your best teams that have good offense a lot of easy wins down the stretch and not be challenged. So I think that clearly Charleston's going to come to play. I think Charleston finishes second. I think Charleston and Hofstra play in the Colonial Athletic Conference Finals. and we'll see what happens with there. Right now, I'd probably make Hofstra. If they were playing on a neutral setting, I think Hofstra would probably be about a 4 or 5, maybe a 6-point favorite to me, looking ahead to where the conference is.
So when we look at this conference here, I mean, obviously it's all along the Northeast, but it is spread out a little bit to a certain degree. I mean, are there any bad situational spots you look for in the CAA?
You know, there's none that I have found that works for me. You know, obviously, when you're looking at strength or schedule, I've looked at some totals, and when I do look to play some unders when a team has played multiple bad defenses. You know, as I said, Delaware, Drexel, Wilmington, Elon, and William and Mary, plus Towson. All those teams are 299 or worse in defensive efficiency. So when you have an offense that played a couple of those teams in a row and all of a sudden is scoring in the 80s and 90s, and then you have to go play one of the legitimate defenses like Charleston, I think you're going to see a situation where your offense can really struggle. You can lose, and I have played one total this year, and I'll look to do that some more as I get into the conference. But it's a situation where because of your playing those weak defenses, if you're all of a sudden playing a better defense after multiple back-to-back 300 defenses, it really can play havoc with your offense.
Well, one thing I think we'll keep an eye on here as we go forward, with Hofstra having that 9-0 record, already beating everybody in the conference, maybe some letdown spots after teams get a crack at Hofstra, and potentially, if they can pull that upset, over the Pride. So we'll finish up this segment here, Rolf, with your situational and technical plays of the week here. Not sure if they come from tonight or tomorrow or maybe later on in the week, but I guess we'll start with the situational play here. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, let's talk the situational first because that is tonight. The technical plays tomorrow. And the situational play for me is Texas against Kansas. Kansas is a team that continues to get love, but you look at this Kansas team and you look at what they've done on the road. Well, they are 1-4 straight up on the road. Losses at Arizona State, which isn't a good loss. A loss at Iowa State I have no problems with. A loss at West Virginia was a horrible loss for them. And then a loss to Kentucky, you know, a game that could have been closer, and they didn't cover that. Their only win on the road straight up was against Baylor. So now you're playing back-to-back road games after being off that game in Kentucky. You're playing your third road game in 4 weeks. Now you have a Texas team, and let me give you, even though this is a situational play, of course I have a technical situation to go with it. And it's teams playing with same season revenge that lost their last game as an away favorite. They're 128, 95, and 7, 57.4%. Again, not an 80% angle, but if you like this team anyway, and Texas is in a situation where they are off back-to-back losses, they went to Georgia in the Big 12 SEC matchup. They lost as an away favorite. They have that same season revenge this year. And Kansas is going to struggle without Azubuike there and being out for the year. Jackson Hayes and the other big for Texas, the 6'9" kid, 250 playing center, his name leaves my mind at this point. Kansas is going to struggle inside, and when you have a Kansas team on the road, and your best player is Dedrick Lawson, and he's got to cover a big on defense, that's a lot of extra work for him when he gets down to the scoring side. Those old days where when Michael Jordan has to play great defense, it hurts his offense a little bit. Same situation here. He's got some bigs he's got to help cover for Texas, which I think is going to struggle on the road. So I do like Texas today, and I think we're getting some value just because Kansas still has the name of Kansas, but they are not the same team as they've been. The injuries obviously has hurt them without having the big in for the last 10 games. and they're just not playing well on the road. At home, I have no problems backing them. On the road, no problems fading them at all.
All right, so we look at the technical play of the week here then, and as you said, that comes from tomorrow night, Wednesday night.
Plain and simple. They've probably given me 5 winners this year already. Vegas just cannot make the total low enough. It's simply this. St. Louis is 1-15 over/under at home, period. And the game that didn't go under the total that did go over, they were a 20-point favorite against NC Central back in November. They won that game 74-65. It went over by a handful of points. The average line in those St. Louis games, 134.8, average score 125.1. So they're going under by 9.7 points per game. And the way the Billikens play, the way they slow the pace, the way they're playing defense, Vegas's job is to put a line out where they're getting equal money. And when the public starts seeing these low 120s, their gut right there is to say, I'm not going to bet under 120. What's the odds that neither team reaches 60 points? Well, pretty damn good when you have St. Louis playing at home.
Rolf Michaels, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. What's going on over there right now, Rolf?
Kicking away, full disclosure, had one of my worst college basketball weeks of the year. So if you've ever thought about wanting to jump on, a lot of times people want to jump on a guy that's won 10 in a row and he's red hot. I say the opposite. I'm off a 2-4 day on Saturday and an 0-2 day on Sunday, and love the card tonight and rebounding, have the big play. If you haven't seen the Wager Talk prop stat sheet, a lot of neat things to look at. Some things, one example off the prop sheet, shortest touchdown is over under 1.5 yards. Like the St. Louis situation, how many people think, I'm not going to bet under 1.5 yards. What's the odds there's a 1-yard touchdown? Well, it's happened 5 of the last 6 times. And when you have pass interference in the end zone as much as we have, that's the same situation. So check that out, and just looking forward to a great Super Bowl. And I'm going to be like everyone else. I've got my few small bets down. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to watch the game. I'm going to drink a few adult soda pops. I'm going to watch some commercials and just enjoy myself Sunday.
Well, make sure you follow Rolf on Twitter at CalSportsLV. A lot of great information on that Twitter handle. Rolf, appreciate the time. As always, sir, thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy that Super Bowl, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Adam.